Welcome to The Loop, your weekly dose of all things property management. I'm your host, Collin Stewart, and each week we dive into the latest trends, strategy, and stories shaping the property management world. In this episode, we're joined by Corey Martin, co-founder of the Rental Association in Louisiana. Corey's story starts with an accidental entry into the property management space that evolved into a thriving multi-office firm managing hundreds of doors. We'll unpack how he thinks in reverse, starting with the end vision and working backward, and how that mindset helps him drive profitable, sustainable growth. We'll also explore his focus on investor education, geographic discipline, and tenant accountability have fueled both impact and income. Welcome back to The Loop, your weekly dose of all things property management. I'm your host, Collin Stewart, and each week we're going to dive into the latest trends, strategies, and stories shaping the property management world. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just getting started, we're here to provide insights, expert interviews, and practical tips to help you navigate the ever-evolving landscape of property management. Corey, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
I'm excited to have you on. I really enjoyed the pre-interview, and I'm just excited to give the listeners a chance to learn from you. Before we jump into all the learnings, I want to talk about how you got into property management. You talk to me about what happened, and I hear you got a real interesting story to share with us.
My wife and I, we eloped. When we came back, we didn't really have a place to live, and so we didn't have a lot of money. Just finding something in our price range was pretty impossible. Well, we stumbled on this house that just happened to be there. It was in our price range. It was a whopping $25,000. But of course, it was a wreck. It needed to be gutted. We had to redo everything to the studs. We did the walls, the paint, the flooring. It didn't have AC units in there. We had window units, so we had to take that out. We put central air and heat on there. So as we're working on this property, granted, this is the first property we've ever bought, people just started popping in. Walking up in the places we're working on it and said, "Do you fixing this up to rent it or sell it?" And we're like, "No, we're fixing it up to move into." And they're like, "Oh man, we're looking for something. We really want it." But at first I just kind of dismissed it. And then more people kept doing the same thing. And so I finally said, "Sure, I'll rent it or sell it. Just, see what they would say," and started throwing a number out there. Well, people started saying, "Okay, I'm interested. I'll rent it from you. I want to rent it." So I was like, whoa, never rented anything out. So I really didn't know what the next step was, but me and my wife sat down and I said, "Hey, this kind of makes sense. We could actually rent this thing. And I know we'd still be living in an apartment, but we really wouldn't have any note because it would almost pay for our rent and this property as well." So we said, let's give it a try. So we rented it out. And we were renting an apartment at the time. A few months later, kind of fast forward there, someone in that same area came up to us and said, "Hey, we heard y'all were looking for a house. We have one that we're needing to move out of. It does need work. We never really fixed it up like we wanted to, but we would be willing to sell it pretty inexpensive." So we looked at it. It was another fixer up, not quite as bad as the first one, but we took it on. We were able to buy it. As we're in there fixing it up, same thing. People started saying, "I want to rent this thing. I'm interested in buying it." And so, of course, I said, well, it worked the last time. I'll try it again. So I said, sure. I threw a price out there. And somebody said, yep, interested. Went back to my wife. And she said, no. She said,
"I'm going to kill you."
Yeah, I'm going to kill you. I'm not staying in this rental property and having this houses. And so I did what any husband would do. I put my foot down and I said, okay, we'll move into the house then. And so we did. We ended up moving into the house. I had to tell the people, nope, can't rent it out. And so we did. We were there probably, I would say 6-8 months, somewhere in there. We had fixed it up, lived in there as we were fixing it up. Somebody knocked on our door. Come to find out, it's a neighbor of a family member that lived close by. And they said, "Hey, we heard you might be interested in selling your property. We want to move into this area and be closer to our family." And so I said, well, yeah, we would consider selling. And I just threw a price out there. And they said, okay, it sounds doable. We'll get back to you. Figured I'd never hear back from them. And of course, I think a couple of weeks later, they reached back out and said, okay, we're ready. And at that time, had never sold a house. So we had to go through the process to try to figure out how to get a purchase agreement, sell the property and all that. So we did. We ended up living there somewhere around 9 to 12 months and sold the property, made a nice profit off of there. And then we took that money and started looking for another one. And we did the same thing. And that was one of the contingencies we told them at the time. It's like, we got to find something else before we can move out.
I've heard you talk about how you like to, you're that kind of visionary person. You like to work backwards.
Yep.
How does that show up in your day to day and how you're running the rental association?
Well, I'm a dreamer, visionary, I guess you would say. It shows up in multiple different avenues. The way I look at things most of the time is I can just think of an artist. An artist can sit there and you just draw the picture. Well, I see the picture. It doesn't matter if it's a real estate company. We have multiple different companies building a house, whatever it is. I can just see where I want it to be. And so from there, I just kind of work backwards. I'll say, okay, this is where I want to go. This is the outcome I can see as far out. And over time, sometimes I'll see it to a certain point, and then as it grows, of course that expands, but I try to envision it as far as I possibly can see out in the future. And then I say, okay, how can I get there? Not if I can get there, how can I get there? And then I start working back to the beginning and say, okay, let's put these steps in place. To me, that helps out from a perspective of, I know there's going to be roadblocks. I know there's going to be issues. I know there's going to be complications. But if I didn't already see the end picture, or at least envision what I was going after, those would be things that could kick me off the path or make me stop or say, hey, it's not worth it. But I already know, this little hiccup is nothing compared to the grander scale of what I want to be at.
That in the pre-interview, you mentioned that you had scaled up to 1,000 doors.
Yep.
And now you're down to 800.
That's correct.
But it's more profitable. Help me understand that journey.
I was thinking, hey, this is where I want to be. This is where I want to go. Put a lot of different things in places. And of course, when you're doing that, sometimes you're putting the cart before the horse per se, and things get at hand. So what had happened, we had built up, but we also had a lot of what I call clutter or fat that was eating up a lot of our time, eating a lot of resources, and just wasn't profitable. And so what we did is we started looking at it. And I think I had a conversation with my partner one day. I said, hey, I really just want less revenue, but more profit. And at first she looked at me and was like, less revenue? How can we have more profit, less revenue? And I said, I think we can grow bigger and with fewer headaches by doing this. Because at the time we were making clients unhappy. We were making tenants unhappy. We just couldn't sustain the level of service we should, because we kind of outgrown, I guess, our staff and stuff like that, by just trying to pull things in that we shouldn't have. So we broke it down. I broke down the numbers. I broke down the clients, I broke down the properties, the employees, the systems, everything we had, and said, what do we have? And how can we make this better? And so we started taking away and say, hey, these properties here or these clients here, they don't align with our thinking. They don't align with our vision. And so by doing that, it helped us refocus in a new way of thinking about who we're going to work with and how we're going to work, being more selective in our clients and our properties, prioritizing alignment, not just based on how many properties we had or how much top line revenue was coming in.
I love that. It really resonates with my story. I mean, beginning of the pandemic, I think we had 85 folks, and we were on track to be 120 something by the end of 2020. And we were doing outsourced sales development. And so we were hiring SDRs and then renting them to tech companies, and they would basically prospect. I think we had 50 SDRs. We had 50 SDRs. We were on track to be 120 billable SDRs by the end of the year. And I was miserable. I hated it. It wasn't the people. The people were great. It was the business model. It was, to your point, it took up a lot of time. It took up a lot of my brain space, and it wasn't that profitable. Fast forward to today, we're coming round in the end of 2025. We're down to 5 people, and we're producing a little bit less profit. But there's dramatically less complexity. There's dramatically less risk, dramatically less variability. And next year, we probably will be more profitable than, not our best year ever, because our best year ever, we had some just unbelievably insane things happen to put us up to, a very, very good profit number. But next year would be our second best year for profit. And we'll do that with 5 people. And I couldn't be happier. Yep. And we're a fifth of the revenue from peak, but a fifth of the revenue, but very similar operating profit numbers and dramatically lower risk numbers. There's nothing that gets better than that.
And time's your most valuable commodity. So I mean, if you can figure out ways to get your time back, that's priceless most of the time, because then you can really focus on what matters most.
It sounds like education has got to be a real big part of attracting the right investors. How do you think about that?
Well, okay, so we do have some of our investors or clients. They're what I call they're high drama sometimes and low profit. So their properties are, they're the type of properties that always have something going on, or they just don't have the money or don't want to fool with fixing them up. And so it's a lot of resources still that we have to put out, but we're not making any money, because there's no revenue coming in, no rent coming in. And then you have the opposite. You have the high profit, low drama properties. And so we started saying, hey, how can we fix this problem? Because some of it's just they don't understand. And so education is where it came in, is educating our clients and our investors and said, look, let's look at these numbers. If this is, you think you're saving money by not fixing this up, or being a, lack of a better word, being a slumlord on it. But if you could just do these little things here, the rents could increase, your profits could increase, our profits could increase. It's really nothing extra on your part. We're going to do all the heavy hitting for you. And it's going to benefit both of us.
When you're looking at, say, a newer investor or somebody who's maybe new with you all, what are some mistakes they typically make aside from, not letting go?
So when we take on a new client, we try to make it as easy as possible. If we take on a client that has come from another management company or something, it's actually sometimes easier. It just may be that they had a disagreement, so they were looking for a new system or a new company. Majority of the people we take on, though, have done it themselves, and they're getting to a point to where they're ready for a management company takeover. Whether it's retiring, I want to travel, don't want to be held down, I've got to a point to where I can't handle it all, some reason. But they've done it up to that point, everything. So when they switch it over to us and they have that existing tenant base, that tenant base wants to call them and say, hey, I need you to fix my toilet. Well, instead of them saying, call my management company, they deal with it. They don't allow the system to work. So we have to really, really enforce the model that it's not going to work. You're going to be unhappy because you keep fixing the problem. You got to say, I've hired a management company. These are the people you need to talk to, and constantly send them back our way. And that's a biggest problem when we inherit tenants that they've dealt with for a while. Once we kind of cycle them through, we got new tenants of people they've never met or seen, not an issue anymore because they don't know their number. They don't know how to contact them. Kind of lends into letting go, but just staying disconnected from that world, which is hard for a lot of owners to do, to let us manage it.
It sounds like in addition to the property management side of things, you're also helping with the financial side of, being an investor and owning real estate. Talk to me about that and how that might play into, how you find more investors.
So I enjoy dealing with new investors the most. And most of the time when a new investor comes along and they want to do something, they have an idea of what they're wanting. They've read some books, they've watched some YouTube videos or something, and they say, okay, this is what I would like to do, but they really don't know how to get it started. And so educating them, saying this is first step, sometimes it's as simple as making an offer on a property. What I find is probably the biggest thing I have to help people overcome, newer investors, is that everything's got to be perfect. Okay, I got my job is great, my kids are here, I'm waiting for this. And as soon as everything's perfect, then I'm going to buy that first property. It's never going to be perfect. Something's always going to be a little off. It may be near perfect, but it's going to be a little off. So letting them know you want imperfection. You don't want it to be perfect, because actually that's when you find the best deals sometimes. And then just walking them through that process. People have been in the business a while. Sometimes, and I think a lot of real estate agents or even coaches can fall in this category. Sometimes it's the simple things that people need to know more than the complex. We're in it and we think, oh, everybody should know that. How can I help them do that? But it's those little things that literally, I can't tell you how many people that we've helped get a property because we've talked them into just making an offer. Let's just make an offer and see what happens. Doesn't have to be a perfect offer. It can be an offer that you think you wouldn't accept, but somebody else may. And then that catapults into someone owning, 50 properties later on down the road.
Corey, I feel like this could have been a 3-hour conversation and we still would have ran out of time. Thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing. If people want to find out more about you, the rental association, all the other things that you're doing, what's the best way for them to learn more, get in touch?
Yeah, so go into we got a couple different websites. So our main website is martinpresence.com. You go there, you can kind of see all of our companies and click on whichever one and reach out to us. As talking about management, the rentalassociation.com. Just go there and you can find all our contact information, and be happy to reach out to you. Online's the best way. Then send in a request and find us. Of course, always calling us. I still old fashioned. I like talking to people, hiding behind an email or a conversation. So you can go there and find our phone number and give us a call.
Right on. Corey, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
And thanks to everybody for listening. We'll catch y'all next time.